kitchen is the only place that I know of where you have to be mindful because you have to be safe. But it's also cooking for purpose of caring for other people and connecting with your story. You have to be careful, but you're also thinking who is coming.
Okay, we are live on Facebook, and I am talking with my friend, chef and life coach, and very old friend of mine, Samir. And I've stayed with Samir in his New York apartment often in Harlem, and he and his family have visited me in my home here in Massachusetts. And we're going to have a wide-ranging discussion about everything from what Samir does to my new book coming out that Samir's organizing some stuff for. I go back with Samir many years. We first met at an event that some of you know about called the Wild Goose Festival that both of us were in at the very, very beginning. And Samir and I shared a ride in a car from an airport with somebody to this festival started by our friend Gareth Higgins, who is later going to be teaching a course based on my new book, by the way, which will be very cool. You can sign up for that, but it's way early. We're going to tell you about it on all my sites later. This is on Facebook Live. It will also be podcast. This is Conversation with Frank Schaeffer. It's available on several podcast venues where you find your podcasts. It's also going to be offered again on Facebook and on YouTube in terms of a recording of this. So if you miss it or you want to tell someone, please like our channels, both mine and Samir's. Anyway, Samir, first of all, will you please tell me about what you have been doing recently with this cooking and life coaching all combined? It's kind of an unusual combination, life coaching and cooking. Give us a thumbnail sketch about what you do every day, and then we'll dig into your past and how you got there and everything else. But let me just tell everybody, I'm a huge Samir fan. You will find that out in about 10 seconds if you read my new book, Fall in Love, Have Children, Stay Put, Save the Planet, Be Happy, where I have a lengthy quote from Samir at the very beginning, which I will thumb to and read at some point during this interview, because it really gives you an insight into what a beautiful, literate, and amazingly poetic man Samir is. I heard back from an early reader, and the first thing she said to me, this was actually the editor of Hodder's and Stoughton, which is a great UK publishing company. She's reading my book, even though they're not the publishers. The first thing she did was cut and paste your quote from the PDF I'd sent her as just jumping out at her. And she put a huge capitalized yes afterwards with a big exclamation point. So I was interested that the first thing someone grabbed out of my book was a big quote from you. So maybe next time you just write the book and it'll do better.
I think, well, you instigated that. We had a conversation about it, and then you said, write it down, and send it to me, write it down. And then I'm like, yeah, I will. And then you texted me and like, I'm serious. And
I was serious. And then
I told my family, hold on for dinner. I'm going to be like 10 minutes late. I'm just going to write this down and send it to Frank. So
I'm gonna find this because in a few minutes we're gonna read it. But okay, I found that. But we'll do that later. But right now, tell me about yourself.
Yeah, I have been, I grew up in East Europe, and between like a Christian, Muslim, and atheist forces and stories. And if you live in Balkans, you realize how stories are important and how history is important. Everything matters. And to understand, life there, you got to live there for 500 years. And since nobody can live for 500 years, you never understand it. There's a lot of things in life are like that. Life is just too short.
Yeah.
And then I came to United States, and after finishing engineering school, I came to United States and decided to do MDiv, which is went to the seminary for 3 years. And it was awesome and wonderful, but looking back now, that's one of my regrets in life of wasting so much time on about 20 courses that I should have never taken and stuff I could have learned during that time.
Yeah.
And one thing led to another. I was a pastor in different churches, and then left that kind of organized religion for good reason, I think, and then became a interfaith activist. We started a congregation where imam, priest, and a rabbi would be on staff. It's called Faith House Manhattan, and worked for a couple of years on that, and finally landed at Georgetown University at the Institute for Transformational Leadership, and finished my postgraduate coursework for coaching, leadership coaching, and then I have been doing that since. Hosting retreats and things like that. And what really fascinates is what my riddle is that is normalizing human transformation. We have made an industry out of it and made it very complicated and serious. It started first with religion, but bringing it down to daily life, to the sanctuary of ordinary life. That's what I'm interested in. I feel like, cooking is one of those things that started with priests of old. They were called magueiros, the priests and cooks and butchers. So because they were dealing with magic, sort of, they were first alchemists. And cooking is a place where first storytelling started. You write in your book how we had big brains, right? We have big brains, and we were able to grow brains because we were able to treat food, process it, heat it, and consume enough calories so we can have a moment of being bored instead of foraging and hunting all the time. And we were around the fire, and we started having memories and plans, and narratives started with actually human capacity to create, to cook, right? And it's a first place of stories of meaning that happens around the table. And then, you take it from there. Every religion, even in the Bible, in the book of Revelation, Jesus says, I stand in the door and cook. And if you and knock, and you are supposed to be cooking, because he says, when I come in, I'll eat with you.
Yeah.
He doesn't say, I'll give you solutions, I will give you theology, we're going to have worship together, we're going to go deep. No, I'll sit down and we'll eat. And that's where the revelation ends. That's it. You can take cooking away, put parenting, put gardening, put walking, put dressing up, put cleaning dishes, anything. And that's what I'm really excited about, is seeing the world differently.
Yeah. One thing is having stayed with you and eaten your cooking there and on the road when we traveled together in Vote Common Good, which was this group you helped found, and I was in on the beginning of too, as we went around the country with people like Representative Ted Lieu that I've interviewed on this conversation with Frank Schaeffer. And Ted helped us by connecting us with a lot of political leaders. You were very involved in that. And we were both out there speaking. You would do some cooking when we were on the road. You also do a lot at home. And as you know, I cook too. I do most of the cooking in our home. We don't go out very often, and we both cook. So we both found ourselves in the position of doing household work that traditionally, actually not traditionally when you go back in time, but in Western culture, in modern 20th century and 21st America, traditionally has been a sort of a more female activity. And of course, if you go back in history, that's nonsense, because cooking was a communal activity and everybody shared it in the hunter-gatherer period and then forward into our own times. But that role of being the person who prepares the meal is very pastoral, because for instance, I cook for my grandchildren just about every day. I feed them in the evenings. Jeannie and I do all the childcare for them. There's nothing I enjoy more. And the only part of cooking I don't enjoy is if I'm just cooking for myself. When it's shared with other people, it's a form of love that I don't think is paralleled by almost anything else for me anyway. Preparing a meal, the only thing that's one better than that is when I go out in my garden here and I pick the food that I planted with those kids in the spring, and then we cook it. I think both of us have really treasure that experience of sharing through these homemaking efforts, at least speaking for myself. And I know you do a lot with this too, in your podcasts and in your the cooking you do online and the rest of it. How does that fit in with your counseling of people who are looking for ways to really connect with others and with themselves more deeply than simply job and career and money? How does all that homemaking and cooking relate to what you tell people?
Yeah, I mean, it relates, it has so many parallels, I don't know even where to begin. I feel someday, I'm going to list all 1,000 reasons for it, because our first, it goes from like a depth psychology to mindfulness to storytelling. You know, kitchen is a place where we make decisions, a place where our connections work with other people. It is a place where we have 5 sense situation of mindfulness practice. So you don't have to, for meditation, go in a car, drive for 20 minutes, go in some room with other people and conjure artificial place in which you need to meditate. You can do that with your carrot, right? So that whole training in mindfulness is way more versatile and way more connected with your daily life, economy of your daily life, politics, aesthetics, your bodily engagement, your family relationships, your friendships. Everything is connected. And if you practice mindfulness there, you're practicing not separate from life, but immersed in life itself. So that's one thing. Also, you know, our brains, you write a lot about your book about like how our brains work, and one of the things that we know is that brains toggle between being fully present in moment or telling a story or making up what we're going to say when we listen to another person. And that's why we either listen or we're preparing our answer, right?
Yes.
So act of listening to each other is an act of trust, basically, of separating yourself from the story that is going on in your head, right? That's a huge human skill, right? And usually, I mean, not usually, it's a toggle mind. We either present or we're making up the story. And roughly Eastern and Western spiritual traditions are based on those two things. Western is story-based and Eastern is based on presence and mindfulness. Yeah. And so kitchen is the only place that I know of where you have to be mindful because you have to be safe. But it's also cooking for purpose of caring for other people and connecting with your story. You have to be careful, but you're also thinking who is coming, right? So it's really a mystical place. If you get into the flow, nothing brings those two parts of you, all of your physical body and your story in the same place.
Yes.
As kitchen does. I mean, other things do, obviously, but it's a art that is also a part of ordinary life.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I find that doing this childcare, Lucy's 12 now, Jack is 10, and Nora is 7. But I've cared along with Jeannie with these 3 children since they were born, and then I have 2 older grandchildren who are in their 20s. And then, of course, my own kids are all grown. I have a son that's 50. This is what happens when you get your girlfriend pregnant when you're 17 and she's 18. Now, Jeannie and I have been together 51 years, but our daughter had her kids fairly young as well, not as crazily young as us. And then our youngest son has had these younger children. But I have found that teaching them to cook and then cooking with them, especially food that we've gardened ourselves. So Nora goes out and pulls the carrots up and comes in and then washes them off in the rain barrel and then peels them. She planted those. Yesterday we were making focaccia, you know, that Italian bread with olive oil and salt. And I took a picture that I think I posted. I can't remember if I posted it or not, where all their hands are patting down. I did a little video where all their hands are patting down the dough.
Oh, beautiful.
And you can see all these hands coming in. And in a way, that little piece of video symbolizes everything that is in this book of mine that I've written, and that I think you're doing in what you present. And by the way, let's just take a time out here to say that people who are interested in following you and getting some counseling from you, we're going to post all that, but just say for a moment, let's take a minute and talk about how folks get in touch with you for your counseling and direction, but also to follow these programs you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, just my first and last name.com, SamirSelmanović.com, and also mysticturn.com. A mystic turn.
I'm looking at it on a blackboard behind you.
Yeah. So that's one way to go. But other way is to just go to my first and last name.com, and that's where I have programs for coaching and leadership and things like that. Including the kitchenhood, which is a word for like a sisterhood, brotherhood, neighborhood. Kitchen is like a wormhole that connects people across cultures, times. And
in terms of the kind of advice you give people, I just want to interject, and then we'll get back to you telling them how to get in touch with you. Here's this quote that I've got, a quote that I've got by you in here, and I just need to find it. But in the meantime, while I'm leafing through and finding this, yeah, here it is. I wrote you a question. What about those of us who have missed the boat in terms of some aspect of our lives we wish had been different? Well, that's me, who was too harsh with my children and have learned to be a much better parent with my grandchildren. Those of us who have fallen off the wagon, it could be any kind of wagon we've fallen off, cut down by injustice or blind fate. Here's what you emailed back to me. Mystics have been custodians of a superpower that every human being has, bridging the inner and outer world and learning to experience life that is larger than our own. This can happen in an instant. Suddenly our neighbors' kids become our own. I miss the artist caravan, but looking at your paintings, I exclaim, look at us artists. Portals to our unlived lives are all around us. You did not have children? Let me tell you about my daughters. They are beautiful and powerful, and they are yours too. I have never had a chance to care for my parents in their old age. May I help you with yours? The moment I allow my heart to feel this void, to have this conversation, a miracle occurs. Past, present, and future collide. This crazy shit makes people lose their minds only to become sane for the first time. Of course, we belong to each other. So you have missed the boat, fell off the wagon, and were cut down. Where has your love gone? It has gone to those children playing while you were walking by. It has gone to causes your life has never given an opportunity to understand. It is going to the grass that will grow from your body soon enough. If you want to, before you go, you have an entire lifespan ahead of you. Take a mystic jailbreak. You are way more than just the, quote, you think you are. I just think that's brilliant. It was worth writing my whole book to get that quote by you in it. And all I can say is that in reading that, in terms of life counseling, I mean, that qualifies you to give advice, because I think that's one of the wisest things I've ever read. And it's not by me, it's by you in my book. Makes me look good.
Well, I'm so glad, and it's usually things that we say are much more shaped by a listener. You say same thing to a different listener, you will say it completely different. It's actually the gift of listening that shapes what we say. So it's much less about what we say, about much more about listener. I wouldn't be able to write this to some other person so easily. It's because you asked, and I give it, I put it out that, and it's with all of us. That I learned that it's very important who you surround yourself with to have a conversation with. So that concept of inner and outer world, so whatever is in our bodies, whatever we feel, who we are is us, right? And whatever is outside of our bodies is us. Both are me. And the question is, do I spend my life preparing myself for my death and my glorious act of disappearance of me into me, or I just neglect that life is so passing, and I don't pay attention to it, and I come to this kind of like a drop-off on my deathbed, shocked that this is happening. No, disappearance is as glorious as the birth. It is just a part of how we belong to the world, and the world belongs to us. It's the ultimate, fulfillment of our beautiful need to belong and our beautiful need to become, right? So it's another turn that happens. And I think I observe people who are capable of playing with these boundaries. It's not easy to play with that boundary because the world is often not safe, But even if it's not safe, you got to learn to trust it. It doesn't matter if it's safe or not. It's not safe, but you have to trust it. Like, that's a skill to be able to do that and know that ultimately, yes, you're going to perish and it's going to be hard, but world and your life is on your side. And the proof that is on your side, that you're right here and you're breathing. For us to be here, it took thousands of generations of love, of people falling in love with one another, making families, working hard, another generation, another generation, another generation, passing on the language and all the love they have down to the years, all the way to our birth, and all the way to all the free lunches. Who says we don't have free lunches for first part of our lives that were giving to us with all this love? Life is invested in me. It's not an enemy territory. It's not.
I love that. I love that. And you know, one of the things that has meant so much to me about that passage that I read from my book is that by you, a long quote, is that there are so many deficits in my own life that I bring to the table in my marriage, in my fatherhood, in my grandparenthood, in my ability for friendship. And I'll give you an example with Jeannie. You know, I'm very sort of over caffeinated, as my granddaughter Nora tells me, who's 7. She looks at me when I'm in a bad mood and she says to me, "Ba, you're over caffeinated today." And of course I say, "Yeah, I had too much coffee." What I don't tell her is, "Look, I'm always over caffeinated. Talk to my wife Jeannie, and this has worked for 51 years. But the thing is, what I loved about what you wrote and what is so true is that we not only can be inspired by other people and nature and all of these things around us, but we can borrow from them and make it ours. So it's, look, I'm over caffeinated. I drive too hard. I'm married to a woman who knows how to live much better than me, and at a different pace. And so her pace can just be mine. This will be a Jeannie day. We will go at that pace here. Or your whole thing about someone without a child. Okay, I have daughters. Get to, you know, these are our children. This is a human community. So that one of the things I talk about in the book is you don't have to be gay, straight, non-binary, male, female, gender, race, and all these other things to be a parent. We are all parents of each other. You are one of my fathers. You're one of my brothers. You're my mother. You care for me when we're in that relationship. I feel the same about you. I don't have to have been a parent to have experienced being parented by my friend Samir, or have even had a father or mother I knew, because I've got you for one of my parents, if I can put it in that sense of caring. And I just think what you wrote and what we both live by, this code of parenting, as it were, which is not gender specific, and certainly sexual orientation has nothing to do with it. This is the bottom line. And I love that idea of the grace of the thousands of generations, but it's thousands of generations of not even necessarily literal parenting. You know, it's the great-great-grandfather who never will meet, but who shared something with them.
Yeah, I mean, when we come to this world, I mean, we learn from Freud, kind of scratched on it, but actually it was years later that we realized, you know, through this object relations that we develop really fast, and our brain is like way more active than any other time. It grows, it doubles itself in a year. Many more synapses are active than when you get older. Actually, your synapses are kind of shrink. So it's just all light up, right? Because you have arrived to this world and you are wondering what heck is going on here, right? Can this be trusted? How will I survive? I have come from traumatic experience of separation from my mother, and now what is this? What's going to happen? And you're asking, am I safe? And you're asking, can the world be trusted? And the first notion that you have that outside world is actually on your side, is in the kitchen, clinging to your mother's, you know, leg, and she's bringing outside world through the door, and father and mother bringing, and treating that matter that is coming from outside, putting it in your mouth. It's actually becoming you. The outside world is literally, you are creating yourself through your mouth, right? And you start trusting that outside world because the care of parents, of the village, of economy and productivity, everything that is happening is actually bringing you into existence.
Yes.
Right. It's experience we never forget. We know that the world is taking care of us because we are here.
Yes.
And I really love in your book when you say like, I'm kind of done with looking for purpose of my life. You know, I I am here with Nora,
Yeah.
you know, and I, it, our world is obsessed. We are all obsessed so much with seeking this purpose of life, and I'm like, give it a break. I do this because I'm here.
Yeah.
Just because I'm here.
Yeah.
Because I have this opportunity to be here, and I have obligation to be here, to pay attention, to participate in something greater than me. I don't have to figure out everything. I just need to let myself be part of things. Right?
Yeah,
And
very much so. And a point picking up from what you were saying before about this sort of generational line, a very dear friend of mine, one of my very best friends, like me, has had some difficult experiences with their parents. Mine were evangelical leaders, kind of put the family second to go do big things for God. I eventually left that fold, as people who read my book or other books will know. You have a sort of estrangement with your family, but let's just say worst case scenario, your parents were abusive. Now mine were not, unless you count physical discipline, which at that time everybody took for granted, but or abusive or abandon you or hurt you in some way. The fact is, the reason you're here, whether they individually dropped the ball or not, or you had an abusive husband or mother or a father who beat you, or you were abandoned, nevertheless, somewhere back in that great generational human line, people didn't drop the ball, or we wouldn't even be here. So that the faithlessness we have experienced is not only the individual relationships we have with parents we know, or lovers we knew, or that abandoned us, or whatever it is. There's a faithfulness that we know is there through an entire existence going back thousands and thousands of years and generations, or we wouldn't have been here. Any one group that dropped the ball, did not save you when you fell in the river, did not feed you or a great-great-grandparent when they were little, did not get you through that war-torn country. People we will never know. Somebody in a hunter-gatherer tribe looked out for someone you're related to, and you're here because of that person. So even when we have lost the joy of the relationships we have immediately in front of us, that should not lead to cynicism about everything. We have a chance to pick up the thread. And so we can say, okay, that was my generational curse. You know, here's what happened to me. I don't have to do this to the next group of people that I'm in touch with. I can revert to this wonderful stream of faithfulness that is the only reason I draw a breath now, because someone did not drop the ball, even if I never knew them.
I love that. And you know, and it's also spilling from lives of other people now in your into your life. It's not just your lineage. It's also the lineage of love that shows up to your friends.
Yes.
Friends are family.
Yes.
If you want them to be, you know, it used to be that family was determined strictly by a tribe, but now everything is so moving and so many moving pieces that we actually need to make a deliberate choice.
Yes.
To have some friends and neighbors and people we know and treat them as a part of our family. I have a group of people like that in my life, and our family does. When they have a graduation or something like that, or their child has graduation, we don't think like, oh, do I want to go? That's not a question. I'm going, right? So I just need to rearrange my schedule to get there, as though that person is my nephew, as though that person, if you do not, you have to treat people around you as though they're family with that kind of commitment.
Yes.
Right? So that you immediately say, no, I'm not making choices here. I am just doing it because they are my family.
Yes.
And people who are really rich today are people who have made that step from bloodline into something else that connects you with other people.
Yes.
And friendship is such an under-researched and underappreciated value that in ancient times held society together. And I feel it's as important as art or anything in life. I mean, there might be, you know, creation, maybe sex and friendship. Like those are the mystical experiences of our lives.
Yeah, and that's one reason you've been so helpful with this book of mine, because I mean, I don't mean to pile it on here, but you're one of those friends that I count on. and you always come through, whether it's helping me promote my new book, Fall in Love, Have Children, Stay Put, Save the Planet. By the way, that title is meant to provoke because it sounds very traditional, but what the book tells you is that my non-binary friends who are not pair bonded have all this open to them as well, because of your definition of family and my definition of parenthood, which is we are all parents of each other. We are all each other's children's keepers. This program is produced by my producer, Ernie, and he is a very close friend of mine. And Ernie and I work together on several levels that illustrate what you're talking about. And that is, we work professionally together where he produces this show. But at the same time, Ernie's one of those people I get to share my concerns with and fears and strategies, and he vice versa with me. So Ernie and I have now a kind of a friendship which makes us family, as well as a professional relationship. And those are the relationships that I have learned to trust and treasure over the years. And of course, one of the tragedies of getting a little older, I'm pushing 70 now, believe it or not. Weird to be an age when you thought that was going to be so old, and now here you are and you're still you, but that's a different discussion. But, I have lost some people like Holly Mead, the illustrator, my dear, dear friend, and all these other people. Well, in new friends like Ernie, who's younger than me, and I hope he outlives me by many years. Chances are he will. But if you have gotten into that habit of making the people close to you real family, then you never lose those who you lose, because your habit in new friendship is you have developed a habit of going very deep with people instead of a lot of trivial relationships, and those people you hold close become family. And one of the great things I learn as I go forward, that I'd rather be a grandfather than a careerist and so forth. Another thing I've learned is that it's imperative to fill that gap when you lose people. When I was younger, I didn't know that was going to happen, but there's about 5 people now who are gone that I have outlived weirdly, or who were a little older than me that I was very close to. And I always had this feeling, oh, this is going to be horrible. They will go away, and I'm going to be this older person, lonely because those I'm closest to have gone. I don't fear that anymore, because I don't know how old Ernie is. He looks like he's 10 or something, but I think he's middle-aged. I mean, I actually don't know how old he is, but he's younger than me. He feels younger than me. Yet here's somebody of a different generation, or my grandchild, Lucy. She's 12, but Lucy's also, besides family, she's a best friend. So that fear of generational loss is irrational if you are ready to reach out to people and make them your family, because the generation, the age, gay, straight, non-binary, black, white, doesn't matter at that point, because you have a habit of doing what you're talking about. I don't know if I've expressed it.
Oh no, it's perfect. The way to kind of operationalize that insight, that I help people with is, who are you practicing of becoming?
Yes.
You're not going to become who you really want to become. You're not going to become what you believe. You're not going to become what's your vision.
Yes.
What you are motivated to become. None of these things you will become. You will become who you are practicing of becoming. Right.
Like that.
So for example, if you are, like, I heard of this woman, she wanted to be an archaeologist, in Arizona, and she's like in business in .com company, and she's working, and she said, well, if I, work for 15 years, I'm going to do the .com thing, and then I'm going to do archaeology. Now, the question for her is, how do you know that after 15 years, you will be capable and interested in archaeology at all? Because you practice for 15 years not caring about things and not doing what you need to do. Mm-hmm. It is like we will come to the end of our lives and we think something will happen. We will kind of like, we'll have an insight, we'll get mature, something will occur to us, there will be revelation coming to us, I'll become like Frank one day, but what happens at the end, you open the door and it's a mirror. Mm-hmm. It's a mirror just showing who you have been practicing being.
Yeah.
Right? And if you are practicing letting people in your life and having commitment and having these relationships, that's how your life is going to end with people. Right?
Yeah, I think that's lovely.
and there is no way around that.
Yeah.
Just look who you are, what you practice in daily life, and this is who you're gonna be.
I feel that particularly we make that mistake when we're younger of thinking that you have steps in your life to get to your real life. So
Right.
I'm in college now. This is just a step. And in college, I've decided to sort of have the college experience. It's not who I really want to be because it's not serious. Maybe I'm sleeping with more people than I thought I would at some point, or nobody at all, whatever. I'm having this college experience. And then later I'll meet the person. That'll all work out. I have a better sexual life. And then we'll have a real relationship, even though right now my relationships are trivial or whatever it may be. You're very right, because I think the people who get the furthest in life are the people who, through luck, because they marry Jeannie in my case, even though you're pregnant teens, or through wisdom that grows over the years or whatever, eventually adopt just what you've said. And I often feel that sometimes I'll get an email from someone who says, I'm thinking of becoming a writer, how do you get an agent? And I email back and I say, did you get up and write this morning? Because the way you become a writer is by getting up every morning and writing.
Yes, by not calling yourself writer. That's right. So true.
Or you meet someone that says to you, hey, you've been married 51 years. How do you have a relationship that works like that? And of course, there's a lot of jokes you could say back. But in all seriousness, it's that, are you taking whatever relationships you're in now seriously and working at them? Because if you trivialize any area of your life, whether it's sexuality or relationships, and then expect to turn a corner at some age, like, okay, I'm 30 now, you have lost the habit of how to do well in that area. Same thing with manners. And I think one of the great things that, and I know as we go on in life that you learn about people is those things you find out about someone that they have done that are not advertised, so that you just happen to learn that, here's a person who, always tips the maid in a hotel and leaves cash for her and a little note. That says far more than, say, building a rocket ship and going to space because you're a billionaire.
Oh,
you're in the habit of being the kind of person you'd want to be stuck with. And I think, the golden rule there is not only treat your neighbor as yourself, but it's to ask a really basic question. And I ask this of myself all the time, which is one reason I'm a better human now than the young misogynistic idiot that married my wife, Jeannie, when we were teenagers and I was this Calvinist Christian. Am I the kind of person I'd like to be living with? It's a really simple question.
Yeah.
And if you can start answering that truthfully, you can get somewhere. And that's that habit you're talking about.
Your life has been very sort of explosive. It's very sort of like, I think like you have 12 lives, crammed into one, and you're a very intense person, right? Like, to be with you is to like not waste a second on anything except to live right here and now and go deep. And my family knows you like that. Like, you are intense in the best possible, way of what it means to live fully. And I forgot what I was going to tell you about it, but the practice of it, the trust of it, it is something that it's often we feel like we need to have a goal for our lives, right? And instead of kind of living that we'll arrive one day, how about coming from that place?
Yeah.
So that's the difference between goal and intention, where you're coming from, right? And yes, what I was going to tell you is the issue of self-compassion. Do I like my own company? Like, can I enjoy my own company? And I think sometimes people enjoy our company more than we enjoy our own. But learning to be in our own presence is a really great skill. And what is also counterintuitive skill is to, as spiritual traditions say, do things in secret. Meaning, build your habit when nobody is watching and don't tell anybody. Which just goes against Facebook, against all this sort of like a exposed life that we're supposed to live today. And I neglected that for too long. I didn't take that seriously, and this is one of the big regrets I have, that have neglected to take seriously all the advice that I got is who you are becoming on your own is actually who you will be, not what you accomplish and what you do and how you appear, right? Don't waste your energy on appearance. Waste your energy, use your energy on substance.
Yeah, and I think that, just pause here to remind people you're watching a Facebook Live event, which is discussions with Frank Schaeffer, a conversation, not a discussion, a conversation with Frank Schaeffer. This is also a podcast. Please like the various sites you find it on if you do like it. I'm talking to Samir, a very dear friend of mine. I read a quote from a book that I'm publishing in November. It comes out November 2nd, Fall in Love, Have Children, Stay Put, Save the Planet, Be Happy. And that's what it looks like. I've got a poster of the book up behind me. Samir's been a big part of this project. Samir,
here's my copy.
You have a copy too. Now, it's not actually print. These are advanced copies for reviewers, and Samir's got one. Samir, take a minute and jump into another thing here and talk about all the nice things you're doing to help promote the book. You're doing some New York events, and you've written and asked some people. You've gotten some podcasters involved. Just give me 2 minutes here of some of that, just so that I can tell folks what a good friend you are, but also just talk about the context of actually trying to promote a real live book that's coming out rather than just the ideas. Now, I've written down some of the things we're talking about in terms of the primacy of relationships, redefinition of success not being job-oriented, but life and relationship-oriented, that we've got to refocus, especially post-COVID and so on. So you can just talk about a little bit about what you're doing for this project and how we've intersected on it.
I really, you have written many books, but this is the one that really, awakes me and keeps me alive. And I feel like this is the conversation that is either the right time has come for this conversation, or it's about 10 years too early. It's somewhere there, right? Yeah. And people who are engaging in this conversation are engaging in conversation about the future more than in anything else, because we have been kept from from paying attention to our ordinary life, being told that we are never enough, that we need to have a control of everything around us in order to feel safe in this world, and we have been indoctrinated through. So on so many levels. I'm not talking just politics and economy and all of that. It seeps through everything, right, into our lives. And you basically have taken the doors down of the building, and there is no any more fixing it. And and there's no way back anymore. You cannot unexperience and unsee what you are helping us experiencing and see. And it's so interesting. It's not just you. It's kind of an emerging thing that's happening all around. I mean, go to news, go to like some other books that are coming out with this topic. We have the rebellion now under our hands, a revolution. Like, I don't want an artificial urgency anymore. I don't want a made up complexity of things. I want to just simply live a life I can call my own. That's all I want. Normal life I can call, this was my life, right? And Van Gogh was saying, I am an ordinary person. They call me, I'm just kind of stupid and ordinary. Well, I'll paint and I'll do, it doesn't matter if people like it or not. I'm just going to show them what an ordinary person is like. Like, that was in a letter to his brother, Theo. Walt Whitman said also, like, if what I'm saying is not true for everybody, if this is not ordinary thing, what I'm saying as a Walt Whitman, I'm saying nothing. It's worthless, right? So this thing about special people and about don't be average, don't be ordinary. It's a statement of judgment to everybody whom we compare ourselves with. What's wrong with being average and ordinary? Yeah. That's what's beautiful about it, that we are all like, it's amazing, right? That's what it is amazing. And I feel like this conversation is so important. And so in New York, we organized one event, but we'll have one in October. And those of you who are interested really to help promote Frank's work and have a capacity to do so, you just contact me, and we can get you connected and be part of that conversation, and you can come to New York and be and conspire, some goodness that way. And also, I want to invite those of you who know Frank to pre-order the book. That's the one thing you can do. Just pre-order one for yourself, one for your friend, and one for your enemy, like 3 copies. And then just participate with us, because it is stunning how little is needed for needle to move. If simple and ordinary people like ourselves take action. This is where a lot of things actually stop, about grandiose thinking and not making small steps. So I want to invite those of you. I'm going to get the book and give it to my daughters as a gift. Will be my book for everybody, and for Christmas. So why not do that? It's just one of these things that is so deeply felt in my daily life, but also in a life of like head and ideas. And
well, I don't think it's a coincidence that I wrote. I spent 5 years working on this project, and during that 5 years before COVID hit, I was spending quite a bit of time with you in your apartment in New York and writing sections of this early in the morning literally at your kitchen table, having been eating meals that you served, having been with you and your daughters and your wife as your guest, and then having you here. So you and I have actually you helped fertilize this project through your friendship, as I've said before, so that, when I have conversations about this book with a lot of other people, they weren't in on developing the ideas, but I think observing what you were doing and what you were saying, and all the meetings we did together, we did a retreat together that you brought me to as one of your speakers. A lot of your life philosophy of really putting the human relationships in our lives first and not being dominated by career aspiration and so forth has bled into this book. So a lot of what you say is here, not because for no other reason, but except personally, I've observed how you've lived and have been very inspired by that. You're one of the people that I look to as an example of, this is someone who knows how to live. The people in your life love you, starting with your wife and your children. To be a guest in your home is to be cared for in a way that is extraordinary and kind. And, every time I have a contact with you, Samir, I come away feeling more complete. And there aren't very many relationships like that in your life that don't somehow inadvertently, even if it's not on purpose, put you down by sort of telling you all this great stuff they're doing. And I got to tell you, one of the reasons in Fall in Love, Have Children, Stay Put, Save the Planet, Be Happy, one of the things I've tried to do in that is share enough about myself so they know what a pain in the ass I am, what an asshole I have been, and trying to grow past some of that so that it's not a question of, oh, look here, how's the way to do it. It's that, hey, if I can understand some of this stuff and tell you the truth about who I am and what I've done that I'm ashamed of in the past, everything from the formation of the religious right to how I treated my wife and children coming out of that Calvinist background as a domineering misogynist in charge of everything. I think there's hope in sharing the reality of our own deficits too, and just putting it on the table and just saying, hey, this book is not coming from a place of total knowledge or great wisdom. It's coming from a broken place that has been able to build in spite of that, which I think offers a lot more hope than just presenting solutions all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, Frank, like when we met each other, you were just always such a fascinating person. And at one point I was thinking, oh, he's keep telling this story about his past, and this is kind of his shtick, this is kind of like, that's his story, his intro, he always talks about it, and it's a great story for an author and a thinker to have and put out there. And I was judgmental. I was thinking, not judgmental, I just realized in the past, I was thinking, oh, this is useful story for who you are right now. But then later I realized, no, Frank is really suffering. You really feel guilt and shame and anger, and you feel like it's hard to bear because the scale of of the impact that you had, that you are talking about, especially in the movie that's coming up, is just so vast, and it's so hard to cross that threshold of coming to a new place. And I think your wound is now a scar. It's kind of healed, and it serves a purpose for a lot of us. But that your body, like you have a food poisoning, it never forgets.
Yes.
Right. 20 years later, if you poison yourself with the egg, you cannot touch the egg.
Yeah.
You have bodily memory of what has been done, right? And you cannot lose it. It doesn't matter how much you are past it, right?
Yeah.
And I really love your invitation to pay attention to your own vulnerability and pain, because that's the only way to have empathy in this world. You have to suffer. Suffering is necessary.
Yeah.
In order for us to be able to love people. Because if I do not suffer, I cannot have empathy for anyone, and without empathy there is no. So when you're parenting, I see my children suffering. I remember my daughters went to Boston my older one to Boston College, and that's why we visited with you often, and she would I remember when she first spent all her money, and I said, "What did you buy last?" She said, "I bought sushi." I said, and you don't have money." She said, "Right. Well, I don't have soap, I don't have this, I don't have that." And I was on the phone, and I said, it was so painful. "Yeah, how are you going to deal with that?" And I'm like, "Of course I can write a check for $100 or $500 and send it off." No, I'm just like, "Yeah, tough. Yeah. Tell me how you're going to solve that." I'm not coming up with any ideas right now. Maybe you can ask your roommate to borrow things until you get in shape. And you can see I'm sinking into the ground. I'm feeling like I'm betraying the person I love the most in the world, right? And she's taking that and she's moving on, and that's why she loves well now. That's why, so it's all a part of this wholeness and life. Both, even darkness holds us, even that is on our side. Even night is for us.
I think one of the things that both of us feel, and that I talk about in the book a lot, and that I've heard you speak on in other contexts, is this idea that if we're trying to get back to square one and how to rebuild something and really start a revolution that changes our culture, where our values are not being dictated to us by shareholders and billionaires and Wall Street. The first thing we've got to do is redefine our personal and national idea of what the word success means. So if we define the word success as a job description or where you went to college, if we define it by the ability to have power over others, we come up with a culture that is consumeristic, ugly, heartless, and loses empathy. In other words, modern America that hates children and families, talks pro-life values and pro-family, and yet you say, well, where's the tax money being spent? It's being spent on oil companies. It's not being spent on single moms and giving them an alternative. It's not being spent on helping parents so one of them can stay home and care for preschool age children. It's not being spent on providing days nurseries in corporations that are run by people who do art and music and fantastic things with children. We have not put our money where our mouth is. So we talk family values, but they're fake family values, because our idea of success is corporate America shareholder success. If it was human relationship success, there would be no impoverished people who were single parents, because everybody would be in a program of sustainability and care that would nourish them. We would not have people having to choose between having an abortion or going broke as a single mom. We would not have to have parents who agonize over how they're going to arrange childcare. We would be living in an entirely different looking culture, which is the one I'm calling for in the book. But it begins by trying to define what we mean by success. Personal life, success in quality of our relationships, friendships, family. Corporate American life in terms of success, of the fact that literally we're not leaving anybody behind and that we have actual family values. And I think that's something both of us struggle for.
Yeah, that's just so resonates with me. I've been in agony coming to United States and seeing like unnecessary suffering that is happening from people who distrust their communal self. It's America has a form of self-hatred and a desire for its own death, because it's treating like we are all, when we are greedy and we are individuals, we are our best. But when we come together, suddenly we are all evil, right? I mean, Americans will forgive Enron in a heartbeat, but they will not forget the State Department when they make a mistake.
Yeah.
They would not forget the government to make a mistake. Government has like companies, they destroy lives on a massive scale all the time, every day. And nobody's saying, oh my goodness, we should do away with companies, right? It is such a bias against the trauma of the Cold War that everything that starts with COMM, compassion, community, communication, all of that is communism, right? Like, so now you have this cynical stand that everything that requires for you to connect, to feel, to be here, to relate, you don't have to do. You just call it communism, right? You call it something.
Or socialism.
Yeah, or socialism, whatever. You just do it. But for a lot of American Christians, there is no imagination. It is basically capitalism and then heaven.
Yeah.
There's
and these same people, by the way, talk about family values, but of course they have eliminated any chance to have families at all in this country, because the real message of American culture is you're on your own, buddy. And then, of course, that gets deified in a kind of an individualistic approach to life.
You're never on your own. You've never been on your own.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a lie, because, of course, no one survives that way, actually. But we try to push it in that direction of individualism rather than any kind of community.
Yeah. And individualism is definitely important. And it's important because it's in the context of a caring community. You cannot be yourself and be who you are in a community that doesn't care and accepts these differences. So interestingly enough, if you are just focused on individualism, you get monoculture because everybody needs to fit. Yeah. Right. But if you have a community, you're allowing for a vast diversity, within it, because you are safe if you're different, because there's a system of care, right? And the level of expectations of what we as a communal self, the government, the citizenry can do for each other is so low here. I mean, we are like Neanderthal level, right? People, like what's not accessible in the United States is just so unnecessary. It would be like saying, oh, let's do away with stoplights because they cost money. I mean, try to do that, right? There's so many things that we have not done that would elevate everything instantly with the minimum investment, right? And I don't know why that is not done. It's a long conversation, obviously, and the stakes are so high with the planet and everything else. But I think there is a good movement towards this, giving up this kind of a American nightmare that
individualism. And it's something both of us have pushed for. So Samir, before we go, I just want to remind people that if they go to www.mysticturn.com, you will get in touch with Samir easily. And if you're looking for some advice and some life coaching, there is nobody better that I know of personally or just know of than Samir. So really, if you need some help, contact Samir, because he has great wisdom, great knowledge, and can be very practical, teach you to cook along the way as a really great chef on top of that. And Samir, thank you for all your help in promoting my new book when it comes out November 2nd. Everything that you're doing, have done, will do. Thank you again for the great quotes in the book that you've let me put in there. Do you have any last word in terms of how people can get in touch with you and what you can do for them if they do in the area of life coaching?
Well, I am really bent on trying to help people find answers they cannot Google, the corporations don't talk about, corporate workshops will not tell you, and religions don't have those answers.
Yeah.
And live a life that is larger than what you can control. Because our sense of fear of being alive in this world and the society that is put on us is driving us to have more things that we can control and less things that we cannot control. But it is when we are not in control that we live fully. Think of dating, think of art, think of humor. All of these things are something you cannot control, and they're beautiful. So it's a form of freedom to be able to embrace that kind of uncertainty. Our fears are in the unknown, but so are all of our future joys, and all of the beauty things that are coming is also in that unknown. So that's where I try to take people, and that's a mystic turn, towards the unknown.
I love that.
I invite to people. So and I hope we all stay in touch. All of us help and participate in what Frank is participating in. It's a movement larger than any one of us. And if you are up for, if you have some ideas, you can contact Frank or contact me, and pre-order. Thank Christmas gifts, thanks birthdays, because this is also another form of a jailbreak. This book is.
Thank you, Samir. And the pre-ordering does really help, because it's a weird world where even the independent bookstores and the reviewers look to Amazon's pre-order numbers to decide if some book is going to do well and should be taken seriously. So it's very strange that we find ourselves in that position. But thank you if you do pre-order the book, 1 or 2 copies. It would really help the project. And Samir, thank you so much for spending the time today. And please, people, go to mysticturn.com and contact Samir if you need some life coaching or just want to be in touch with him about any of the projects we've talked about. And I appreciate everyone watching here on Facebook. Please like the page, and please go to YouTube if you want to watch this as a recording, or back on Facebook, or to my podcast, where this and many other good guests that we've had these great conversations with every week are appearing. Thank you. And Samir, thanks a lot. Take care. See you out there.
Thank you, Frank.
Much love.
Sending you love. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.